Why don't they just move the camera?
No, I don't.
I know, because I got to be careful moving this. There we go. Yep, get your face in there. Oh yeah, you just went you went worldwide.
Oh.
Worldwide. I know a lot of people are thinking, will Carl Jung go worldwide?
Yes.
In 3D. You remember we fought these guys?
Where's Nazi Barbie?
Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud are going to fight.
Where's Nazi Barbie?
Nazi Barbie, we had to how about we had to put down. Nazi Barbie, here's Nazi Barbie.
You had to put down Nazi Barbie. Oh.
Nazi Barbie is done. All right, so we're right here in the Mexican War. I know. You have to just right, or the hips break. You got to be smarter than Nazi Barbie. I bet no one has ever said those words before in the history of the world.
Especially on live YouTube.
You have to be smarter than Nazi Barbie.
Can they even see it?
No, I don't think so. So they're just wondering what the heck we're doing, not just surrendering. God, yeah.
You can't like push your body forward that much.
Because you push it, she bends at the waist. So one more time, ready? Nazi Barbie. I'll save Nazi Barbie for later.
That's so creepy.
That is really creepy.
I'll save Nazi Barbie for later.
I know. Once I said it, I was like, that didn't sound good at all. All right, so just to review, James Knox Polk is elected president, and who did he defeat? Who did he defeat his last attempt to be president?
Clay.
Yeah. And when Clay didn't win, it is now done, but the American system lives on. They're going to try it again. And Clay would be Abraham Lincoln's political hero. Speaking of Abraham Lincoln, what was the resolution he made?
Spot resolution.
Yeah, that spot resolution. What was the Thornton Affair? Remember the Thornton Affair?
Just to make the U.S. war alive.
Because what happened?
Because they were attacked by
Because they may have been on Mexican.
on their own.
They might have been Mexican land, U.S. cavalry. What do we call those cavalry? The light cavalry? Dragoons, because it's fun to say. And who was sent south? What general was sent south to the Rio Grande River to provoke this attack? Oh, rough and ready. Yep, Zachary Taylor. And we're right here in California, right? And they revolted, and the United States government was clearly somewhat involved. Fremont, the Pathfinder, happened to show up, and Fremont was, what he was leading a military expedition to map this region, but he just happened to show up in Sonoma right here, just as the revolt was beginning, and then joined it. It's pretty clear the United States plan was either provoke an attack on the Rio Grande or in California and come to the aid there. That would be the way to justify the war. Well, it already happened. War was declared, but they didn't know it. When this happened, they didn't know it yet. So that was Sonoma, and I did tell you what happened to the flag, didn't I?
It burned.
Yeah. And so that's all we have. If you ever get a chance, Sonoma is really a cool area. It's a pretty area of California. You know, low mountains. It's miles of vineyards because it's wine country, but it's just beautiful. So what happened was, here's Taylor. And the United States had to very quickly organize an army to defeat Mexico. And the plan was, we had a very small army, but basically advance into Mexico, win one big victory, they'll surrender, or they'll not surrender, but they'll sign a peace agreement, U.S. will get California and New Mexico. That was the plan. Boom, quick victory, go. Now, the call went out for volunteers. Most of the volunteers came from what section of the country? And so many came from Tennessee that Tennessee is going to be known as, well, no, what state?
Baby Texas.
It's the volunteer state.
Oh.
So it's the volunteer state at the University of Tennessee, the Volunteers. They kept that name. So Taylor's here, started getting reinforcements. Now, they did have some trained soldiers. There would be one battle of Palo Alto, but the battle we need to know is this. He crossed the Rio Grande and at Monterey. August 1846. Now these lithographs, they've been done with a printing press and then watercolor, were the rage. They were quickly industrial, process of the Industrial Revolution. You could get one of these and feel like you were there. It became really popular, especially during the Civil War. So there's a lot of these kind of pictures. But back to this. So, Monterey, a very, very bloody, a very confusing battle, but the United States won. Taylor would win. Yeah.
What are those numbers?
The numbers are the dates. August
Oh.
21st through 24th, 1846. All you need to know is August. And the United States stormed a Canadian, where did I get to Canada? A Mexican fortification would win. And I'll tell you a little bit more about this in a sec, but Zachary Taylor is going to become a great hero out of this, which panicked Polk. Taylor's a Whig. He's thinking, oh, my replacement's going to be another Whig general. But the Mexicans did not sue for peace. They did not quit. Right before this battle happened, Santa Anna, who was in Havana, Cuba, in exile, which is then a Spanish colony, he sent word to Washington, D.C., telling the Americans, you help me get back to Mexico City, I will take over, become president again, and I'll give you California and New Mexico. That's what Santa Anna said. And after this battle, the U.S. said, why not? And so the U.S. actually gave him money to get from Havana to Veracruz, which is the harbor city right here. And we got Santa Anna back. He and his hundreds of wooden legs. They got back. He arrived in Veracruz and was met by cheering soldiers, triumphantly went up the mountains, overthrew the government, the generals that were in charge ran away, and Santa Anna took power again. And then immediately vowed to do what? What's that?
Beat the U.S.
Yeah, beat the U.S., also get back Texas. So the U.S. made a terrible mistake. Santa Anna, despite its flaws, was a leader that the men respected. He was talented, and he made plans to attack the Americans. While this is going on, Polk realizes, okay, California by then had basically, the U.S. had done a couple military operations along with the revolution, took this part, but they got to take Mexico City. He didn't want to give the battle for Mexico City to Taylor because it might give him the presidency. So what Polk did is while Taylor's up here, they took away almost all of his trained forces and gave them to another general to attack Mexico City from here. The general they gave it to was one of the greatest generals in American history, one of the heroes of the War of 1812, Winfield Scott. A very fine general. That's him at Veracruz, a picture of him. Intelligent, but he might have been a Whig, but his nickname should give you an idea why they didn't think he was a political threat. You know, Zachary Taylor was old, rough and ready, kind of sounds like Old Hickory. He was Old Fuss and Feathers. Old Fuss and Feathers doesn't really get that popular emotion. He was really big into discipline. Everyone had the exact right uniform and shine buttons and shoes, and they called them Fuss and Feathers. Yeah.
Why was Santa Anna in exile?
After the United States annexed Texas, he was overthrown because of the anger about annexing Texas. He was overthrown in Mexico. He's back. And while that happened, Santa Anna marched north. Just as Taylor lost most of his trained forces, replaced with pretty much untrained volunteers, at another battle, the Battle of Buena Vista. And this is going to be in February 1847. This one is a really dramatic shot. I guess it's really pretty there. I don't think you want to go to this part of Mexico now. But Santa Anna attacked Taylor's forces while his good troops were with Scott. Yeah.
So where was Scott at?
Scott was actually they'd taken a Mexican place called Tampico, but they're about ready to attack Mexico City.
Why did he get the good forces?
because Polk wanted him to take Mexico City. He didn't want to make Taylor too big of a hero.
So was Scott a Democrat?
No. Scott was a Whig, but he was old fuss and feathers. And they thought he wouldn't get the popular support like Taylor.
Oh, okay.
And this battle, a 2-day battle, on the first day, the Mexicans nearly overran Taylor's forces. But the United States had 2 really big advantages that would be decisive in this war. This is a dramatic shot. I always like that one. This one, though, shows them toe-to-toe during the Mexican assault. They rarely got this close, but they want to show both sides. And no, Taylor would not be right here. The Americans had 2 things. And this would be really important. It would be important in the Civil War, too. They knew how to use and had very good cannon, artillery. And they were using a new weapon. Do you remember grape shot?
Yeah.
A canister was a new one. Imagine a can, a cylinder about this big, a can about that long, now full of very crudely made, so it didn't have to be perfectly round, but basically musket balls about that big. So you put about 200 in a can. Then you put that in the cannon, and then you fire that. What do you get? And then you think about not only just the musket balls, but the pieces of the can will break up and literally rip people apart. They would soon, as years would go by, they would devise shells that not like they do today. The shells are designed to rip up into thousands of jagged pieces of metal. So they do that today. In fact, it was invented by a British officer by the name of, I think it was Henry, but it's shrapnel. So have you ever heard the shrapnel? The little pieces from artillery round. It's really a man's name, was shrapnel. But back to this. The cannon, the Mexicans charged, Mexicans fought with great courage, but the problem was they couldn't beat that artillery, just mowed down too many. And the second big advantage Americans had, a professional officer class. Now, being professional officers does not make them better, smarter, correct, but the men trusted them. There was a feeling, at least, that the officers were chosen on some kind of real criteria and not because they were friends or paid money or had important parents like the Mexican army, where the officers were just chosen purely on their connection to the leaders. Yeah.
Could you go back to that last slide? What was the name of?
Say it again.
The name of the battle.
Buena Vista. I'll put it up here. You see it right there on the bottom here. B-U-E-N-A, Vista. 1821, the United States would open their military, the U.S. Army Military Academy, copying the French. Where would they open it up? Where's it at? Yeah, that fort above New York called West Point. Soon after, they'd open up the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. There is an Air Force Academy that opened up after World War II. There was Air Force created. There's a Merchant Marine Academy, too, in Connecticut. I can't remember the year of that. I've had students go to all 4. So that's kind of interesting. But the Mexican officers could not, or the men did not have the faith of the Mexican officers, and that would be decisive in this battle. Decisive. And so, Buena Vista, and ironically, Taylor is going to be even a bigger hero. And this will propel Taylor to the presidency. This battle, Buena Vista. So it blew up in Polk's face. Now, most of his trained officers are going to go most of the experienced officers are going to go with Scott. But Taylor would have a number of officers, many of them would be heroes of the Civil War, or at least officers from the Civil War. One officer with Taylor was a West Point graduate. He would become Secretary of War, Senator, do something else too. Oh, he was Zachary Taylor's son-in-law. Zachary Taylor didn't particularly like him, but he was his son-in-law. Buena Vista and Monterey, his name was Jefferson Davis. Now, my assumption is you've heard of Jefferson Davis, but he would become the president of the Confederacy. And he would fight here with Taylor. Soon after, his first wife did pass away, Zachary Taylor's daughter. He got to remarry. So, back to Scott. Scott, after Buena Vista, actually while Buena Vista is happening, and Santa Anna's going to have to run back down here to defend Mexico City, Scott landed here and began to march overland. Oops. And the thing is, how to get out of Veracruz? Yellow fever was the scourge. They didn't know what caused yellow fever, where it came from, but it was an epidemic throughout the Caribbean. And the thing was, if you were there in the summer, spring or summer, there's a good chance you're dead. So get out of Veracruz, up in the mountains. Later on, they would discover what spread yellow fever. What? No.
No.
Not rats. Skeets. Mosquitoes. Sound like a Lewis and Clark. Skeets. Didn't know it. Yeah, mosquitoes. They wouldn't discover that for 50 years, over 50 years in the Spanish-American War. Get off there. So what Scott did was, with less than 10,000 men, he abandoned his supply line, kind of like what Cortez did when he attacked the Aztecs, and went up the mountains. This is all or nothing. And most people thought Scott couldn't do it. And this is one of the great what-ifs in history. What if Scott was defeated? And he very well could have been. At a couple different passes, his army was almost stopped. If Santa Anna would have had more time to place the soldiers and just a couple lucky breaks for the Americans, they could have been stopped and we'd have a totally different course of history. And then one more battle just in front of Mexico City. And the battle is, oh, there's Veracruz, Chapultepec. And Chapultepec, in August of 1847, it was on a hillside. There was a Mexican fortification, an old Spanish fort that was built on an Aztec ruined by the Spanish. And the U.S. had to take this fort. If they take it, the road to Mexico City is open. And this was a very, very close run affair. On the first day, it looked like it wasn't going to happen. And you once would just thank me again. Another name. Right? If you have children, think about Chapultepec. Yesterday I gave you Freeling poison, didn't I? I give you so many names. You should be writing this down. The Battle of Chapultepec, a number of officers who would fight in the Civil War would fight in this battle. Heck, Winfield Scott would be the commander of the United States Army when the Civil War began. An officer he mentioned in a dispatch, which was a big deal. Today, medals and awards are given out a lot more than they were then. And so just being mentioned in dispatch, a young captain, West Point graduate, father was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, on the 14th, or 13th, I'm sorry, he marched around he crawled for half a day. You can imagine how hot it's going to be in August in Mexico. Crawled around the Mexican line and found a hole in their line for the Americans to attack. And Scott would mention it for bravery. His name was Robert E. Lee. Another person mentioned in another dispatch for bravery was a young second lieutenant graduate of West Point by the name of Ulysses S. Grant. They were both here. And remember, Grant, you probably know, Grant would become the commander of all Union forces by 1864, and Lee would be the most important Confederate general, and at the end of the war would be commanding of all Confederate forces. There are other ones too. Bragg was there, McClellan was there, Jackson was there. Just other Civil War general. Stonewall. Andrew Jackson was gone.
That's what I was thinking.
But with Chapultepec and the victory there, Santa Anna had no choice but to evacuate, and in September, there's the painting of Scott entering Mexico City. Now, when Polk heard that, he heard it at like, we took all of Mexico. Polk's like, let's take the whole thing. Let's get all of Mexico. But the thing was, Scott is in a pretty precarious position. Yeah, he's holding Mexico City, but he's got no supply line. He's surrounded by thousands of people who hate him. He's isolated. He can't stay. He's got to find Santa Anna, get an agreement, and get out. Just because Scott entered Mexico City did not mean that they conquered Mexico. Santa Anna was fleeing north. Fortunately for Scott, Santa Anna could not leave his stuff behind. He had over 40 wagons in a long train carrying all of his personal items, slowly being dragged down the road. So he had all of his, from everything from wine to tapestry, a number of wagons full of just rugs, and at least 4 wagons full of artificial legs. He had legs for every occasion. He had legs for every single military, every government, every occasion. So he had a leg specifically when he was in cavalry uniform, or when he was army, when he was Navy. He had some legs that were just simply a stump. Some were carved to look like a leg. He had some that were diamond and ruby encrusted. He had a golden, at least one gold encrusted, one gold and silver encrusted. He had one that was supposedly solid gold that would have been far too heavy to use. That's not my favorite though. He had 2 legs. Now this, I would love if these would have somehow survived. One leg was supposedly a cannon, a small cannon. And I'm still trying to figure out how you would use that. I guess you would go, bang. You just get shot. Oh yeah, donk. And think how bad that would feel on the, the stump. And another one was a sword. You had a sheath, and now you have a sword.
For a leg.
Yeah, for a leg. Now, first off, you take a step. Aren't you going straight down? And how would you use that? Yeah, or kind of jump out and beat first. Yeah, here I come.
I could do it like I could do a karate coup.
Yeah, karate. Yeah, that'd be like that.
That's on
Yeah.
that's on forever on.
I saw that movie at the theater when it was new, because I'm old.
Me too.
Did you see it at the theater? And so, yeah, you had to come back to high school. What can I say? I never left high school. Well, dragoons captured Santa Ana. And so they captured him, brought him back, and then can you imagine what the American soldiers did with this wagon train? What they did?
Burned it.
Looted.
Yeah, they looted it. So everything of value. Let's put it this way. All those legs that have gold and diamonds, they disappeared. Poof, gone. Soldiers got hold of those, and they took them back, and they're gone. And then there are all these other wooden legs. And they start running around with legs. Oh, we got legs. They're just having a blast with the legs. Baseball had been invented by them. And so they were playing baseball with the legs. Now, their rules were different. For example, there are no walks and a few other things like that. But they're still playing it with the legs, and that would have been kind of fun. And then they made bonfire, just had a blast with the legs. Well, somebody got one of the wagons that just had straight wooden, either carved legs, that carved with a foot, or stumps. Just a piece of wood. And somehow, they got it back to Veracruz and got it back to the United States. This whole wagon full of wooden legs. And in it, they carved something out of that became the real big souvenir for the Mexican War.
Baseball.
Especially after the U.S. won, I was like, gotta get something.
Baseball bat.
Good guess, but no. Because baseball bats, you can only get maybe one per leg. Something you can carve a lot of.
Chunks.
What?
Just chunks.
Just chunks. Toothpicks.
Ew.
A Santa Ana toothpick became the great souvenir of the Mexican War. And soon there are millions of Santa Ana toothpicks being sold because how can you tell what wood it's from? Now don't think of a toothpick today, which is one toothpick, use it once, throw it away. Think about like a pencil, but about half the width of a pencil. And it's just a piece of wood, and you would carve a point to it and use that, pick your teeth, and then when it gets dull, you carve another point. And so they're about half as big as a pencil. Santa Ana toothpicks. There's one in the Smithsonian Museum of American History, but you got to search for it. It's just in kind of a little, just kind of away on the side, and they have this part of it that has various things from Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Mexican War, just a few things, and it's just there in a little cabinet. You have to search for it. I don't know if it was ever used. It didn't look too bad, but a Santa Ana toothpick. Don't let me forget, I'll tell you the rest of the Santa Ana story, because he's not done yet. So, they got Santa Ana, and the thing is, Scott has to get a treaty. The man Polk sent down was Nicholas Trist. Nicholas Trist right here. Polk tried to say, come back, let's get the whole thing. But Trist ignored Polk and would sign the treaty, or get Santa Ana to finally try to sign the treaty, Guadalupe Hidalgo. Santa Ana delayed and delayed and delayed. And finally, this is the treaty. This is wax for their wax seals each of them had. Trist got it. Trist looks pretty creepy in that picture. I like that picture. And remember the glass frame, the glass, what am I trying to say? The glass negatives they used. You see that glass broke. And Trist just ignored it because he realized Polk doesn't know what he's talking about. The U.S. could not have taken it all. And so Trist basically got got what the U.S. wanted in the first place. And the treaty is going to be the Rio Grande will be the southern border. That's guaranteed now. And then California, New Mexico, it's going to be called the Mexican Cession. All this area here. Cession means it was ceded by Mexico to the United States. Ceded means cession. And lastly, the U.S. didn't want to make it look like we fought a war for conquest. And so the U.S. still paid $15 million and also paid Mexican debt that U.S. claimed they owed them, U.S. citizens did, of $3.3 million. So basically, net $18.3 million. So the U.S. paid for it to make it look like we aren't conquering. Now, if you look at this, that's steal. Literally, a steal. The U.S. conquered it and then stole it. And then, yeah, we paid a little bit of money, but how do you even measure the value of California? So this was a steal. So Mexico lost this. This won't go away. In World War I in 1917, Germany actually sent a note to Mexico saying, if you attack the U.S., if the U.S. enters World War I, we'll give you this back. So it was still an issue. There's still what's called the Reconquista movement in Mexico that talks about getting this back, but it's obviously not realistic today. But yeah, but in a way, it kind of allowed for the survival of Mexico because they lost half its territory. It was way too big to govern before. Now, one more thing we have to add. In 1853, this area right here is called the Gadsden Purchase. I don't know if you can read that, but it's Gadsden. That's the Secretary of State. The Gadsden Purchase, 1853. Has everyone got that? I tie that in there because that was a part that people are like, why did you get that in the treaty? The Gadsden Purchase. Now, originally, Gadsden wanted to buy, see where my hand is? All this and the Baja to get the whole thing. But eventually, for $10 million, the U.S. bought that. The reason why it's pretty rugged here, this is flat for a transcontinental railroad. They were going to build a railroad here. Eventually, after the Civil War, the Southern Pacific would go there. Yeah.
So what was this a part of? Was this a part of the treaty?
It wasn't part of it, but it tied into the treaty. The reason we put it in there is because that was the last part of that Southwest that the U.S. didn't buy, but would get in 1853. Right. And the reason why I mention it here is because that is, the continental United States is now done. The U.S. has purchased, acquired, however you want to put it, all the territory that would be the continental U.S. after 1853. Then the U.S. would acquire other lands after the Civil War. For example, they get Mexico. I was going to say Mexico. Alaska. That's kind of awkward. And eventually then they would take the independent country of Hawaii, things like that.
For 10 million?
Yeah, for 10 million. That might seem a lot, and especially when you compare it to the 15 million. But partially, Mexico could run a hard bargain by then, considering what had just been discovered in California and how much California was worth. And there was an element of guilt. We stole. You know, we stole. Well, the thing was, what was the issue? Slavery. Slavery. Will this be open to slavery? Here's the 3630 line for the Missouri Compromise. Now, that only affected the Louisiana Purchase. A lot of people thought, just spread the line to the sea. That's a lot, slave and free. That was a compromise that people talked about. But free soilers would have none of it. In 1846, David Wilmot would send the Wilmot Proviso. Proviso means an amendment to a bill. It was to an appropriations bill or spending bill for the war. You don't need to write all that down. Just get Wilmot Proviso. Now, quick read. That is from the law. And what did that law say? Now, this is 1846, so the war isn't done yet. But it's saying for after the war. And it's a very awkward way of saying it, but you notice they use the word. It's actually a big deal. Involuntary servitude, that's like an indentured servant. What's it say? No slavery where? Yeah, meaning the Mexican cession. So, the Wilmot Proviso simply said, any land we get from Mexico, no slavery. This is huge. You can imagine the reaction in the South. You know, the way they reacted about Texas and Missouri and everything else. But what made the South really scared was this. It was a proposal to a bill in the House. It passed the House. And that terrified them. The northern population was growing significantly faster in the South. And they could do the math. They do the next census in 1850, more northern members of the House. 1860, more northern. They're terrified. It didn't pass the Senate. Didn't. But if these become free states, they'll lose senatorial balance. And now they're done. To them, Wilmot was just not a legislative law, let's discuss and debate. No, this was a direct attack on their very way of life. Abraham Lincoln would later say, in the 2 years he was in the House, he voted on some form of the Wilmot Proviso 46 times. It passed the House, failed the Senate, passed the House, failed the Senate. All you had to do is say the word Wilmot. You might not have more than an argument. I mean, you might have more than an argument. You might have a fist fight. They were punching each other in the cloakrooms of the House and the Senate over Wilmot. All you had to do was just Wilmot. So the election of 1848, Mexican session, it should be like, we won this war, this kind of patriotic election. No, it was Wilmot. So, the election of 1848. Nobody wanted to touch Wilmot, yet everybody knew about it. The Whigs, once again, did the war hero. Here's Zachary Taylor. Oh, rough and ready. Now, this is a bad sign because I'm going to make you know the vice president. He's from Louisiana. So we got Taylor from the South and Millard Fillmore. Fillmore, a northerner, supporter of Henry Clay's American system. So the Whigs tried to get balance. But what was their position on Wilmot? The Battle of Buena Vista. The Battle of Monterey. Oh, rough and ready. Yeah.
So they're running against each other?
No. This is his vice presidential nominee. The Whigs chose him because they wanted a southerner and a northerner. But by the way, since I'm making you know Fillmore, this is a bad sign for Taylor, isn't it?
Taylor.
Taylor, Zachary Taylor.
He died.
I don't know. Yes. And they avoid the issues completely, but there's kind of a whispering campaign. Okay. To the northern Whigs, they say, we can't say it, but he supports Henry Clay. That's why we have film. He supports that American system. You can trust him. To Southerners, they say, he's a plantation owner. He's one of us. So they have no set position except war hero. Sound familiar? The Democrats are in total disarray. The free soil issue has split the party up. So they nominate this sad toad-looking guy by the name of Katz. We've seen pictures like that before, and I'm still trying to figure out how you get that face. Try it. I mean, it hurts to get that.
Oh,
That's pretty good. Now go ribbit.
I can't do it.
It's hard to do ribbit off of that face like that. You don't need to know Butler. He was a war hero from the War of 1812, actually.
What's his name?
Katz from Michigan. And Katz is a northerner, but he's pretty pro-South. And his idea is, he stole it, called popular sovereignty. And popular sovereignty, it's kind of a scam, but what it means is, we'll let the territories decide. The people in the territories decide. Now this sounds very democratic. We'll let the people there decide. But it's not. It's a scam. And everybody knows it's not a legitimate way to choose this. And the reason why is simple. This area in orange and pink, that's what the Mexican cession. It did not have, or there were no slaves. Remember, Mexico banned slavery, one of the causes of the Texas War of Independence. If they have a popular sovereignty vote, if they let the people decide in 1848 about slavery, they'll choose no slavery. And so it's a setup. But if they say we'll vote in 5 years, if the vote is in 5 years, that means this has to be opened up for what? For 5 years.
Immigration.
Immigration will bring their slaves. And if that happens, that will turn the immigration upside down and almost certainly guarantee slavery. Yes, that face will be very appropriate then. It hurts kind of to do that, doesn't it? Well, and so this really sounds good, but it's not a legitimate issue. And a lot of Democrats were furious, and Free Soil Democrats left the party and formed a third party, the Free Soil Party. They got members of the old Liberty Party and Free Soil Democrats. They nominated, once again, he's back, Martin Van Buren. And with this scary alien four-headed looking guy is this vice president. You don't need to know him. I just want to point out that big alien head like thing. Look at that head. That's not a forehead. That's like a 5 or 6 head. That's Charles F. Adams with John Quincy Adams' son. Southerners were right. Martin Van Buren was a free soiler. Yes?
What was the name of the vice president for Taylor again?
For Taylor, Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore. Well, very quickly, then what happened was this. Because combination of war hero and free soil, the Free Soil Party taking away Northern Democratic votes, Taylor's elected president. Taylor's elected. And this is a classic example why third parties do not work in a winner-take-all system like the United States. Because most of the Free Soilers were here. The Free Soil voters in New York, for example, they took away votes from the Democratic Party. They took away votes from Katz. So a vote for for Martin Van Buren in New York was the equivalent of a vote for Taylor. That is why we have two parties. That is the reason. Democrats were furious at Free Soil Democrats, and eventually Free Soil Democrats, along with abolitionists, would form the Republican Party in a few years, but that's down the road. And the thing was, well, Taylor's elected, and he's got lots of time, doesn't he? Now, who's going to come to California quite yet? There's all this land. He doesn't need to make a decision, and frankly, he doesn't know what he wants. But what's discovered in 1848? Gold. Gold at Sutter's Mill in California. There's John Sutter. Gold was discovered. He tried to keep it secret, couldn't. The next year, thousands went to California. What do we call these people if they came the next year? What were they called?
Carpetbaggers.
Actually, that's a reconstruction term. That's a good one. Because a lot of stuff would be in carpetbags. Good. They were prospectors, but they had a name. Because they came the year after that? 49ers. That's where the term 49ers came, where all the people came for the gold rush in 1849. All of a sudden now, here they come to California. They're trying to, do we go around South America? Do we go across Nicaragua? All this stuff. And California now wants to be a state. Immediately, they're too big to not have a government. And they want to be a free state. No slavery. That issue, I mean, literally, it's just like, boom. It exploded, the issue of slavery. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to give you this, Nolan. In fact, I'm going to give you this now. It's a packet of a bunch of stuff in the Civil War. This has a bunch of, just hold on to this. I'll just give you a packet of notes, which are really good, but this is worksheet for video. I know it's going to be gone, so I put down 2 sets of questions. I haven't decided which video I'm going to show you on. Actually, I'm going to be here on Thursday, but my other 2 AP classes are going to be gone for meetings, so I'm going to show a movie that day. I want you everyone the same thing. But there's some documents, there's other stuff, Civil War. No, but I like the Civil War series, the cause I really like, and so I'm going to show that.
When are you
When
are you gonna finish telling us about Santa Ana?
Oh, don't let me forget Santa out to begin the class. Don't let me forget. Go ahead. I love this steamship to Nicaragua. Where's the mouse? Oh, there we go.
I don't have no money.
Like